A man sits in his office alone, writing calmly and carefully. He meticulously notes every detail about the buildings surrounding him. The positions of every camera, sensor, door, and window, all written down in Italian, coded in abbreviations only he can understand. He draws a sketch of the layout, his hand steady as he outlines the shapes of buildings and streets, the most important of which being the compound that he is currently renting an office in, the Antwerp Diamond Center. He notes the three main blocks of the compound, three interconnected buildings, each one having a different layout than the other. He labels the blocks A, B, and C. The first block, A, marks the face of the Diamond Center, which fronts the street of Schupstraat. It's a narrow vertical slab of concrete and glass, 9 stories tall, yet barely 100 feet wide. The heavy concrete awning juts over the sidewalk like a permanent scowl, casting a thick shadow over the main entrance. A CCTV camera watches the entrance from above, providing 24-hour video surveillance. And next is B block, the largest structure in the compound. It sits directly behind A block. The man notes its tiered, blocky design, 13 stories above ground, with 2 more buried beneath. It's here, 2 floors underground, that the vault is located, the core of the building and its most secure area. Most tenants operate out of B block, some occupying entire floors. He sketches the marble corridor connecting it to A block, where all foot traffic is funneled toward a bank of elevators, only 2 of which reach the vault level. Cameras, sensors, and reinforced walls make B block the true stronghold of the Diamond Center. The man then focuses his attention on C block, the final piece of the puzzle, sitting low and wide at the back of the Diamond Center. Only 4 stories tall, it was the most overlooked of the 3 buildings. Cracked windows, smudged glass, and nothing about it that would catch the eye. But to the man, it was the key to achieving his goal. Unlike the front of the complex, C block opened directly onto the street Lange Herrental Straat, just outside the Diamond District's high security perimeter. Through one of its 3 corrugated garage doors, tenants could slip inside without passing the vehicle barriers on Schupstraat. He circled this access point in his notebook, noting the guard booth that sat just north of the garage. Despite this, it was still less guarded than the front, and just exposed enough to offer a way in or out. With his notes complete, he leaned back. The layout was clear, the vulnerabilities mapped. Now it was time to leave Antwerp behind, just for a while, and meet with his crew. The real work was about to begin. The man's name was Leonardo Notarbartolo, the mastermind, and he had been renting his office in the Diamond Center for several weeks. On paper, he was a jeweler, a modest businessman from Turin with a taste for Italian design and a small operation in Valenza. In reality, he was something else entirely. His office, tucked behind an unmonitored door on the 5th floor, served no commercial purpose. It was not a showroom nor a place of business. It was a front, a staging ground. He was not there to buy diamonds. He was there to learn how to take them. Leonardo was joined by 4 accomplices, each selected not for their loyalty, but for their precision, experience, and specific utility. Together, they formed a tight, specialized crew, each man a tool for a different part of the job. Elio De Honorio, known as the Genius, was the technician. Soft-spoken and intensely focused, Elio had an intimate knowledge of alarm systems, circuitry, and security electronics. If a signal moved through wires, he could trace it, disable it, or replicate it. Ferdinando Fignotto, called the Monster, was the physical force of the crew. Towering and heavy set, he had both the strength and the calm presence to handle the physical demands of a job, whether lifting, braking, moving, or forcing something that wouldn't yield. Pietro Tavano, known as Speedy, was the observer. Anxious and fast-talking, he had a talent for noticing things others missed, timings, movements, patterns. He acted as the crew's eyes and ears, always watching, always recording. The King of Keys was a veteran locksmith whose real identity remained elusive even to some in the crew. He was older than the others, quiet and exacting. His reputation was built on precision. He could duplicate any key, decode mechanical locks, and understand physical security systems better than the people who installed them. Each man brought a critical skill. None of them were replaceable, and under Leonardo's leadership, they were about to plan something few would believe was possible. For over 2 years, Leonardo played the long game. He studied the Diamond Center like a man obsessed, memorizing every hallway, every guard shift, every sensor and lock. Day after day, he moved through the building like any other tenant. But behind the quiet facade was a man documenting every inch of the compound in a private code. Despite the Diamond Center's reputation, Leonardo found cracks. Big ones. The vault, 2 floors underground, was the heart of the building, secured by a magnetic alarm that would alert an off-site security company the moment it was opened after hours. Motion detectors, light sensors, reinforced steel doors. But the problem wasn't the design, the problem was neglect. Much of the tech hadn't been updated in decades. Leonardo took note. Meanwhile, his partners back in Italy studied every photo and diagram he sent. Together, they recreated the security system from scratch. They ordered replica locks, tested countermeasures, and designed a specialized tool that could rip open the safe deposit boxes contained within the vault without drilling. Drilling would set off vibration sensors. Picking was impossible. The spaces were too tight. But the team found a flaw. The interior faceplate of each box was plastic. With the right force, the brass deadbolt could be bent just enough to pop the door open cleanly. The sensors guarding the vault posed a different challenge. The motion detector relied on 2 systems, infrared to detect body heat and Doppler radar to sense movement. If both were triggered together, the alarm would sound. But the crew found a loophole. A light coat of hairspray would blind the infrared lens. Then, using a styrofoam panel mounted to a broom handle, they could block the radar waves long enough to move inside. The light sensor, mounted on the ceiling, could be neutralized even more easily, with a strip of black electrical tape. But bypassing the alarms was only half the job. To open the vault itself, they needed 2 things: a physical key and the combination. The key, they learned, was stored in 2 parts: a long pipe in a wall-mounted lockbox, and a small stamp kept by the concierge. Or so Leonardo assumed, until one day he watched the concierge unlock the vault using a key that had never been taken apart. It was a stroke of luck. The staff had grown complacent, keeping the full key stored together just feet from the vault door. The lockbox was protected by nothing more than a cheap wooden door and a basic padlock. One twist of a crowbar, and it would be theirs. But the vault code was still a mystery, and it may always be. Some believe the team used a hidden camera to film someone entering it. Others suspect they lifted it from a concierge's wallet, where it had been carelessly written down. And then, there's the simplest theory of all. The dial was never scrambled, and the correct code was just sitting there, untouched. No one knows for sure. But whatever the method, it worked. Once the plan was in place, Leonardo's partner Elio, the alarm specialist, flew to Antwerp under the cover of a routine technician. Using Leonardo's tenant badge and a fake work order, he entered the building and waited until it emptied for the night. He then descended to the vault floor within B block, obscured the security camera, and approached the magnetic alarm mounted on the door. The alarm system relied on 2 metal blocks, magnets, that had to remain in contact. If the connection broke, an alert would be sent. Elio came prepared. He clamped a custom steel bracket over both magnets to keep them together while he carefully removed the bolts anchoring them to the door. Then he used industrial tape to reattach the magnets, repositioned exactly with shortened bolts placed for appearance. To any observer, the setup looked untouched, but now the magnets could be gently moved out of the way during the heist without setting off a single alarm. Over the following days, Leonardo returned to the vault daily. He checked the alarm, the key, the sensors, making sure no one had noticed. On one of his last visits, he masked the motion detector lens with hairspray. It took seconds. By the time he left the building that Friday evening, everything was in place. That weekend, the rest of the crew quietly arrived in Antwerp. They moved into Leonardo's apartment in staggered shifts, careful not to draw attention. They brought with them bags of tools, electronics, and the custom box pulling device. They made runs to hardware stores on the outskirts of town, picking up drills, crowbars, power inverters, and industrial batteries. Elio fine-tuned the remote they'd built for the garage entrance in C block, reprogrammed to match the door's original frequency, which he had captured during his infiltration. They picked their date carefully, Saturday, February 15th, 2003. The timing was perfect. Antwerp was distracted. A high-profile tennis tournament was in full swing. The head of the Diamond Council was getting married, and most diamantaires were home recovering from Valentine's Day. The building would be quiet, the vault would be sealed Friday night, and no one would touch it again until Monday morning. That Saturday, inside Leonardo's apartment, the tools were laid out in rows. Every piece of gear checked and rechecked. There were no second chances. The men slept during the day, reviewed their roles, and kept conversation to a minimum. When evening came, they dressed in dark, quiet clothing, soft shoes instead of leather, no jewelry, no excess. They packed their gear, zipped their bags, and slipped out into the night in small groups. Their entrance had been planned for months, not the front. That was too risky. They would go in through C block, through the garage, out of sight and beyond the reach of the guards. The cameras were blind, the sensors disabled, the code was ready, the alarms, they'd stay quiet. The garage door in C block opened just wide enough. One by one, the crew slipped inside, gloved hands gripping heavy bags, breath visible in the cold February air. Just beyond the corner, the police kiosk sat still, unaware. Their lookout whispered confirmation. All clear. The door shut behind them. Tavano, the driver, peeled off into the night. His job was just beginning, monitoring police radio from the apartment, ready to call if anything went wrong. Inside the garage, silence. They moved fast, crossing through the back corridors of C block, heading toward the interior threshold that led into B block. The path had been rehearsed for months. No cameras, no footsteps. Just dim emergency lighting and the hum of distant machinery. At the stairwell, they slipped through the door and began their descent, 2 floors down, into the belly of the Diamond Center. At the bottom, the vault foyer. Donorio immediately approached the magnetic alarm mounted to the vault door. The sensors were still in place, exactly how he'd left them. With careful hands, he peeled the tape and lifted them off, keeping the magnets connected. The system stayed silent. Next, the storage closet. A single blow from the crowbar splintered the wooden door. Behind it, the lockbox. Inside, the full vault key, still assembled. Still sitting just feet from the door it was meant to protect. Leonardo stepped forward and turned the key. The bolts retracted with a low, mechanical groan. Once inside the vault, Fignato reached up and masked the light sensor with black electrical tape. The room plunged into near-total darkness. No one spoke. Then came the final obstacle, the motion detector. One man extended the styrofoam panel on a telescoping rod, slowly moving it toward the sensor. Once in place, he taped it down, sealing the device. The alarms were blind. They flicked on their red-lensed headlamps. The bags hit the floor. The tool came out. They mounted it to the first box, cranked the handle. Pop. The door flew open, and the looting began. Leonardo acted as evaluator, deciding what to keep, what to leave. They couldn't take everything, only the best. Diamonds in folded papers, gold bars, bundles of euros and dollars, jewelry in silk pouches, loose stones in certification blister packs, heirlooms, antique coins, $1 million in cash from one safe. They knew when they'd hit a big one. Boxes owned by major dealers, their entire inventory stored just inches from the thieves' gloved hands. By the time they stopped, they'd opened 109 of 189 boxes and made a score of over $100 million. They packed up quickly. The diamond bag alone weighed over 40 pounds. Before leaving, one crew member peeled off toward the Schupstraat side of the building. He used a second fabricated key to enter the security control room. The VCRs were still running. He pulled the tapes, both from that night and from February 10th. when Denorio sabotaged the alarm. 4 tapes total, labeled, dated. He replaced them with blanks and locked the room behind him. Then, the final signal. The garage door opened. Tavano pulled up to the curb. The bags were loaded fast, the weight of them sagging the suspension. The crew climbed in and disappeared into the dawn. No guards, no alarms, no witnesses. Just the echo of a door closing behind them, and the vault they left wide open. But the perfect crime didn't stay perfect for long. Just days later, a Belgian farmer named Gust van Kamp was walking his dog through the Floordambo's woods, not far from Antwerp. There, scattered beneath the trees, he spotted something strange. Bags of trash, but not ordinary trash. Inside were cut-up security tapes, diamond paperwork, rubber gloves, and a half-eaten salami sandwich. Van Kamp called the police. That sandwich, incredibly, still carried traces of DNA. And when forensics tested it, the match was immediate. It was Leonardo Notarbartolo's. From there, the case unraveled. Police tracked the garbage to a rented apartment in Antwerp, just blocks from the diamond center. Inside, they found more clues. Tiny emeralds embedded in a rug, a vacuum bag full of diamond dust, and fingerprints on glass and grappa bottles. Surveillance records, phone data, and DNA tied several men to the crime. Notarbartolo was arrested shortly after, still playing the role of the innocent jeweler. He claimed he'd come back to check on his office, but the police weren't buying it. During his interrogation, he stayed calm, too calm. Even when detectives showed him a photo of one of his accomplices, he didn't flinch. As the arrests stacked up, the trial began in 2005. Belgian prosecutors accused Notarbartolo of leading the crew known as the School of Turin. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison and fined €1 million. 3 of his co-conspirators, Finotto, Tavano, and Denorio, were convicted in absentia and received 5-year sentences. But the loot never found. Not a single high-value diamond was recovered. It was the perfect crime, only ruined because of a tossed sandwich in the woods.